What's up, gentlemen? How you guys been?
Good.
Morning.
Hey, doing good.
It has been a minute since I've seen some of y'all. Some of y'all I'm meeting for the first time, but pleasure to meet all of y'all. For all of you in chat, thanks for joining us. My name is Nabil Pervez. I'm the lead PM and head of events at AAA Creative. I'm also on the IGDA board, along with Squirrel. And today, we're going to be talking about AAA, the evolution of game development. So we have a ton of awesome panelists here, wonderful folks that we're going to ask them a little bit more in depth about how things have kind of evolved over time. So, gentlemen, if you do not mind, could I ask you guys to please introduce yourself, your current role, maybe a brief outline of your past experience, maybe 3 to 5 sentences, something brief. Notable releases that you might want to plug, as well as maybe your specific area of expertise, if that's all right. Squirrel, you want to kick it off?
Sure. Just as I sip my coffee, I'm Squirrel Iserloh, and I've been in games, for fun my whole life, and professionally since the mid '90s. And I came up through programming, so I've done some design, but mostly programming. I was a lead programmer or a technical director at Ion Storm, Ritual, Mumbo Jumbo, and True Thought. And I worked on a bunch of, first-person shooters and a variety of other games. That's me. And I'm currently a professor by day, indie developer by night. I teach game programming and design at SMU Guildhall, which is a grad school for game development.
Anthony, you want to take it next?
Nice to meet you guys. I'm Anthony Cloudy, known as Pico to some. I graduated from SMU Guildhall. Thanks, Squirrel. I previously worked at the indie studio Fractal Fox. I spent the past 2 years working on Minecraft Bedrock Edition, and then now I currently work on Minecraft Education Edition, and I specialize in gameplay.
Brian?
And I'm Brian Thomas, BT, as everybody at work calls me. I'm the managing director of design at Gearbox Software. I got into Half-Life modding way back in high school and parlayed that into an opportunity at Gearbox. I've been with them since 2006. So just crossed over 14 years. So I'm a really bad millennial. I had one job. Beyond that, started on Brothers in Arms franchise, worked on all the Borderlands games, held a variety of design positions, level design, cinematics design, systems design. Now I kind of lead up the design group for a studio.
Sick. Okay. Thank you guys again for taking the time and being here. So first question, I'm going to give you a really hard one, super hard off the bat, absolute nail biter. What got you into game dev? And if you can, and give me some of the good highlights of it. I have a ton of questions. I apologize. There's a lot of other stuff that I want to get into, but give me like the small short story version of it, if you don't mind. Squirrel, you want to start?
I'll go last, actually.
Okay, no problem.
Maybe we can do snake draft, and I can start this round. I've been playing video games since I could form memories. In high school, I started to pick up modding in spare time and really took to Half-Life modding. So worked on Counter-Strike and Dave Defeat at the time, and got really interested in the technical side and started to run websites on esoterica of level design tech in the late 90s and just sort of being on message boards. Went to college, completely did other stuff for a while, and then graduated, and through fluke ended up back here in Dallas, and a bunch of my friends that I had previously done a short contract at Gearbox happen to still be here and want a roommate, and working with them, got my portfolio back up to snuff after taking like 4 or 5 years off, and that's how I got in, and that was in the stage of the industry where I think Guildhall had just started during then, so that was sort of the era before there was even any collegiate programs. So I think a lot of people from my generation are all like, yeah, we poked around. We took whatever software we could have access to, and sort of spent all of our free times poking around in the shadows and seeing what we could do.
That's excellent. Yeah. So I remember that the first console that I ever owned was a Game Boy with a copy of Pokemon, and everything was kind of set since then. I was like, yeah, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. So I ended up going through school, being like, all right, I want to do game dev. Looked out for programs, found Guildhall, met Squirrel, learned a ton from him. And then while I was interning at Xbox, I ended up doing a bunch of like professional networking to try and get myself over to Minecraft. So I ended up starting there.
So yeah, like BT, this was before there were any schools. So I went to school, studied physics. BT, I'm curious to hear what you majored in.
I have a degree in political science and creative writing from the University of Kansas. Go Jayhawks.
And but then I'd heard, Doom had come out and when I was in college, and I was huge into that and almost failed out of school. Decided I wanted to work with those people, whatever it took. And then I heard that Tom Hall and John Romero were breaking off and starting Ion Storm. And so I thought, that would be great. And all my friends said, oh, you should apply. Because I had been doing a bunch of game development on MUDs at the time, which were like pre-graphical World of Warcraft, like text only. But just for fun. So I debated about it. I knew they were going to get a pile of resumes, but I also knew they were D&D geeks like me. So I decided to send them a story of a young wizard's apprentice named Holrezi, which is Iserlo, my name backwards. In the story, the wizard, appears before this conclave of archmages and the great mage Oromar, which is Romero backwards, and all this stuff. And this whole thing in story form of me as a programmer wanting to join them. And with no explanation, not even a, hi, Tom, hi, John, just sent the email with just the story. And 2 days later, I got an answer back from them in story form. And then I thought, this is where I need to work. So then they ended up flying me down, and I joined Tom Hall's team to work on Anachronox, which is a RPG, so Japanese style. So that's not exactly replicable.
Squirrel, that's nuts, dude. That's so cool. Wow. That's okay. That's definitely going down in the notebook for like cool stuff that I've heard of. Okay, so obviously things have kind of shifted and evolved and changed over the years. I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about that evolution of the game dev studio landscape, right? So as team sizes and budgets for all these high production, high value titles has inflated over the years, how specialized are roles now versus previous generations of titles?
On my end, it feels like the longer you will end up sitting in your career, the more specialized you will probably end up being in at least one or two lanes. Whereas most entry-level positions tend to be very generalist because you don't know what you're actually good at until you actually start really poking around in a professional environment. It is crazy, though. I mean, I go back and I think about, in the past, 2 console generations ago, if I needed some audio, I may have plugged a microphone in and just recorded it myself and given it to an audio engineer, and that would have been fine. And now they would throw me out of the building for desecrating their audio pipeline in that way. I think in a good way, that means you're getting a lot more people that are really hyper focused and love to geek out about their subject matter. And that's always fun to have more people like that around in a studio setting, because, we can actually have graphics programmers that are hyper into graphics programmers instead of a generalist coder who 20% of their time is going to be focusing on graphics, in the same way that we can have Foley artists and people really managing voice acting and video directing and all those different pipelines that 20 years ago were so nascent. It was probably one or two people wearing a lot of hats. So it doesn't have to start people's career that way, but it definitely feels like now careers tend to trend that direction. You see less senior generalists, and you see a lot of senior people that have high expertise in their domain.
Yeah, and I think that depends a lot on the size of the company. I mean, even at Gearbox, for example, I think things were very different. Yes, 10 years ago, but for me, even more different when it was 50 people instead of 300 or something.
And both studios were tipping at 500.
Right. So I feel like if you're at Ubisoft Montreal, you are definitely going to be in some specialized niche. Whereas if you're at a smaller independent studio of 20, 30, 50 people, I still think it feels a little bit more like it used to be. So I think a lot of that also depends on the size of the studio. I think smaller studios tend to really like hiring generalists because they know people are going to have to wear 2-3 hats. And the big studios, I think sometimes they are looking more for specialists. I've always been a generalist, and I think the nice thing about that is it does suit you well for leadership roles where you're sort of 70% good at everything, and you don't have to be the best artist or the best programmer or the best at 3D or 2D or whatever. But so I think there's a place for both. But yeah, I think it has become bigger and kind of therefore more specialized.
Yeah, especially as I've seen a lot of the smaller studios locally move towards. They're somewhere between outsourcers and just ancillary support studios for other studios. They tend to also value those kind of like people that can come in and wear a bunch of hats because their project demands are going to vary differently project to project versus a more established company that maybe is running 1 or 2 IPs and focusing on sequelization. Like they have a lot of known things in those paths, whereas those more flexible, agile startups are going to be like, working on a VR game one week and doing DLC content for some AAA game the next week, and then maybe helping somebody out on a mobile port the week after that.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
go
ahead, Anthony. Go ahead, Anthony.
I was just going to add that, just backing up what Brian said about kind of more early in career being easier to get in as a generalist. Like that was my path in. And also like just my general experience made it easy to kind of transfer around teams internally inside of Minecraft and figure out, more of where my specialties lie. So definitely want to back that up.
So
and I'll add one more thing. In the Valve employee handbook, there's a picture of a person like this, and they call it the T-shaped employee. And they basically want everyone to be open to and able to jump anywhere and anything. And, you're a multiplayer expert. Great. We're now doing a single player game. Like, so how are you useful to us? So, but they also like people to be deep in that they can go deep and have some depth. And so if this thing comes up of like, hey, can we randomly generate those levels? I'm like, that's my thing actually. So I think they like people to have sort of T-shape. And I think that's a universal adapter, I guess, if you will, if you're trying to think about building your skill shape.
Yeah. Number one skill I tell college students is learn to learn.
Right. Yeah.
That's a great one. Well, okay. So in that same sense, though, say we are talking about those larger teams and whatnot. How hard is it to get into a specialized role? For example, so for instance, you are someone who's maybe you are specialized in at one particular thing. At those larger companies, is it still hard to get into that specialized role, or do you find that going to those companies you have to come to them as a generalist first and then work your way into that role?
I've seen it honestly work both ways.
Okay.
I think a lot of kind of the bulk of college graduates and people otherwise that are new to our industry, they need time to actually work. If they're coming to a bigger company like that, sometimes you just need to be there for a while to understand the scope that those companies can actually operate at and the divisions and where the needs are. And sometimes you can spot a need and kind of like tip yourself in that direction. Be like, hey, it looks like you do need somebody to work on, random dungeon generation. Like, I can volunteer for that and suffer the consequences or revel in the glory, depending on the job that I do there. Whereas, like, I've also seen, we've seen some just highly talented, amazing 18, 20, 22-year-olds that just, for whatever reason, self-taught, whatever, like they have a hyper specialization because they got super into Houdini in high school. And by the time that they came out of the college pipeline, like they were ready to plug and play at a high technical level. There's definitely both archetypes of people out there.
Agreed.
Well, that was easy. Okay. Well, in that situation is while we've been talking about how game dev studios have evolved, I also want to talk about games and how the audience reach has kind of evolved. Games right now are in more hands than ever before. So why do you think that gaming audience has expanded so much more rapidly?
At least from my perspective, mobile has definitely changed the landscape that we have for gaming. A lot more people play Minecraft on Android and iOS than on any other platform. And so this combined with games becoming, yeah, I know, right? Surprised me too.
What?
Yep. Yeah. But yeah, so like games are becoming more and more accessible at the same time. And you have more of these kind of like, not necessarily casual, not necessarily hardcore, but like good intermediate experiences that are like somewhere in the middle, appealing to both kinds of gamers that not only, create new experiences for AAA, and like people who love really, really hardcore AAA games, but also like giving more of a ramp to get into deeper and deeper with gaming. And just with more people who might not consider themselves as gamers, fitting that label through mobile. I think it's helping grow the industry and bring a lot of new perspective and people playing our games that we've never experienced before.
Wow. I figured it contributed, but that's nuts, Pico. I had no clue.
Yeah.
My niece and nephew are constantly walking around with their tablets showing me stuff they did in Minecraft. And
if you ever want to be shocked, go find some middle schoolers and quiz them about games. And it's a different generation coming up.
I do, and I think there are very few people in the generation who aren't going to use the word Minecraft in their story about how they got into games. I think it was profoundly influential. Yeah, I think, and some of that is just generational in that when we grew up, you had to go look for games, right? And when I was in college, you had to go look for a bulletin board or something like that to connect to. And now it's ubiquitous, right? You can't go anywhere. And my mother is 80 years old and she's not a gamer, but she plays Words with Friends, several hours a day. So, so I think there's just a seepage over time, that we've experienced.
I think you're also seeing like gamification touching other aspects of life is feeding back into adoption because you're seeing a lot of educational software move towards gamification. I was shocked the other day as I was filling out a mortgage application, and I mean, it was an XP bar just, cranking up as I'm giving them all of my stuff to get a mortgage approved. I mean, like, that's reducing friction for it definitely for children. Like they're just native to the concept of games being ingrained in almost everything they do. So being in one app that's an educational app that's heavily gamified and swapping over to a different app that's just a pure game using the same mechanics is like their brain's already wired for it. And I think then you're seeing their parents see it in their banks and their all kinds of other aspects of their life, and they're less skittish about it. They're less fearful that their kid is, be involved in these things. And then when they try to engage with their children about it, they actually understand the mechanics. They actually understand the UI and what is actually being presented to them in a way that probably wasn't true 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, and just the ubiquity of computers and internet in general, like everyone has to use a computer practically, and you're going to get bored. So,
yeah, we have a whole generation of people just locked in their houses right now, staring at their computers and tablets.
That's actually what I was actually about to lead into for my next question. Is do you feel like COVID, like just as a side note, do you feel COVID has kind of had that effect of pushing people more towards gaming as well too?
Absolutely.
I can't imagine it wouldn't.
Yeah.
And even during the recession, in 2008 or whatever, it was still on the rise. And a lot of times because people weren't going out and having an expensive dinner and a movie, they would do something cheaper and go play that game that they've already bought.
Yeah.
Yeah, the value proposition you're getting off of games per hour right now is really good. And I think as you're also seeing just, especially right now, people have gone through Netflix, they've gone through all their other, video queues and just anxiously like, hey, Chef's Table Barbecue dropped last night. Great new content. I have something new to watch. Whereas video games, they can keep going back to that well over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Wasn't it Netflix? I'll misquote this, but the Netflix CEO was saying that their competition wasn't, the networks. It was Fortnite.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, and with experiences and games coming out like Animal Crossing at literally the perfect time, especially like just honing in on that game and like how much of a communication tool it is as well as a game, like really just fits a niche that we need in the world right now.
For sure.
So
But I would also heavily caveat that COVID's final effects on the industry are going to be measured long term and not in the short term.
Yes.
Because I think you're going to start to see knock-on effects where, one day people are going to be able to go outside again, and they may not want to sit around and play on their computer anymore. They may want to go in the sunlight and go see friends. Retail's really getting hit. So that's pushing more of those retailers to digital retail where it's, expedited warehouses, not an actual physical place that you go and buy things. So I think you're going to see, a lot of independent video game shops are going to probably go down through this, which is sad and a loss. So there's going to be winners and losers across the entire thing. I think, as I said, like Animal Crossing was right time, right place. I think Call of Duty dropping their MOBA was right time, right place. So there are definitely some portions of the industry that are very well positioned to benefit through this. But those parts of the industry that are really heavily reliant on like retail and face-to-face, that's going to be tougher for them.
And it's interesting too, just seeing there are all these now unmet needs, right? Whether it's aggression unmet through sports that are canceled, or just all the heaviness of the world right now, and so you start seeing games sort of leaning into those directions to fill those voids, right? With both more action games, but also more sort of Zen games, and I find it very interesting.
Yeah, the content offerings that are going to come out over the next 24 months are going to be really interesting because it's going to be like what's developed while everybody is trapped in these boxes for months on end. Going to be some interesting narratives that come from that. I think we're going to see a lot of games about like isolation and loneliness and depression and anxiety. But you're also going to see a bunch of like walk in the woods Zen simulators where I can just go and enjoy the outside space that I can't actually get to right now.
So
and there's no question that it is having and probably will have a lasting permanent effect on game development. Certainly, like everyone else, we've learned that we can work better virtually than maybe we thought. And some things like that.
I was actually about to bring that up, but perfect. So I think that kind of leads me a little bit into this next question of we're everyone here has like been looking for new content to watch, different things to enjoy and watch. Gaming entertainment is something that's really evolved as a byproduct of this too, where it's that let's play game consumption, or that you're watching on YouTube, or it's I want to watch these professionals play on Twitch and whatnot, and understand better ways to play the games, or all these different examples of us trying to connect with other people, but using video games as that medium that we want to watch, we want to consume. So with streaming and video on demand platforms growing in popularity, and the consumption of games media has expanded to just watching personalities play games. So whether that's from competitive formats to casuals to comedic playthroughs, in what ways has this really changed the developer mindset or even the landscape towards developing these titles?
Well, certainly it's one of those questions, just like we used to have the annoying producer questions at the start of every fun creative conversation of, what are our platforms? What is our audience? What is our how do we make money on this? And now you have that, how do people participate passively question in that group as well. I think a lot of games now are taken with that design in mind. Is this needs to be fun, not just to play, but also to watch played.
And it's also like feedback loops that we get. So I know that like back when I was working on vanilla, anytime that we pushed out a beta or a snapshot, like
he means Minecraft vanilla.
Yes.
Sorry, the base version. Yes.
Yeah, Minecraft vanilla. So specifically, anytime that we pushed out an update or any sort of like beta snapshot, we would get immediately like our designers would go and comb through all of the YouTube Let's Plays and be like, this is what people like, this is what people hate. And then there'd be like all sorts of like, oh yeah, well, I guess we never saw that coming, or yeah, that probably was going to happen. And so being able to have that feedback like just immediately without having to, just the community gives you the feedback, so much easier. And it's just an easier way to get more connected with the community.
Yeah, definitely. I can remember back, this would have been like post-launch for Borderlands 2. We had done a raid boss, and we were concerned about balancing. And the first thing that we did was like, okay, well, we got it propped up, and some streamers were playing it, and we were just 8 of us hovered around a monitor just watching these high-end streamers play it because they're going to play the game in a way that none of us as developers can. They're playing games 80 hours a week. Their skills are just going to be better than any developer that we have on staff. They also have better builds than our QA team. It's just they're a different tier of player to judge your game against. And then immediately it's like, okay, well, they destroyed that, so let's push some data patches up to the cloud and push it back to them and see if we can like crank the difficulty down on them. So it's really a fun new way, and you can really drive yourself insane as a game developer, because I got to support that person as a user, because that person's great. They're going to go play this game, and if they like it, they're going to evangelize it. Even if they're not evangelizing it, their viewers are going to see them enjoying it, and they will want to go enjoy it too. I got to support that person, and I got to support the person that like maybe this is their first-person shooter ever, and they're still trying to figure out how the sticks work. And both of them are valid customers. We got to figure out how to how to keep both of those groups happy at the same time.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that, like, just to also build off of that, like, see speedruns of our games and stuff like that has also like changed the landscape as well. I have my own personal opinions on like how to like find the right balance of like what is a bug and what is like helping speedrunners, like that whole sort of situation. Like we have a lot sort of new problems where something that like would just be like any other time in game development history would have been like, yeah, it's a bug, fix it. Now sometimes has like moral ambiguity attached to it, where it's like, well, this is like the most nuanced bug that you have to like know about how to exploit, and the only people who are going to do that are speedrunners. So like, if we fix this, we're taking that away from them. So it's like now we have just a lot more ambiguity in anything that we do.
That I think the first thing that comes to mind for that is like the Doom Eternal bug. Have you guys seen that speedrun?
Oh man, yeah, that's the one with the. Are we talking about the one that like on the collision they like build up speed and then get to launch off? Yeah,
Squirrel, I'm sending you this link, bro. You're gonna lose your mind.
I can see the code in my head.
Well, it's also kind of controversial too, because for that to work, you need very specific hardware. You need very specific refresh rates on that. You need to bind the keyboard in a really specific. The mouse wheel in a really specific way. Like, but the results are amazing. Like it's the weirdest, coolest thing. But
for those people, like we always joke that for those people, if that's the thing that makes them happy, that's the thing that like validates their purchase and their investment in the game, then like awesome. We punch at a slightly different weight class because we're not trying to be a competitively balanced esport, and like people that have that constraint around them in terms of design and what is a bug and what isn't a bug definitely have to hedge towards like the viability of the game as a platform for esports to work off of, versus something like Doom or Borderlands. It's just like, I don't know, if that was funny to you and you wanted to spend 8 hours figuring out the exact refresh rate that your monitor needed to be at to make that thing go. Great, I love that. I wish that person would go into a programming field in college and go take that energy and focus it on something.
And it's interesting for project directors as well as community managers or whatever, understanding that that there's a value in those things and that you can have unintended consequences of trying to fix things. Like, for example, you might say, we're going to provide this wiki for our game that's going to, people can go to see all the crafting recipes or whatever, but then you're robbing your community of the opportunity to rally around your game and create that wiki and maintain it, right? And so in some cases, less is more, both in terms of the bug fixing and rounding off all the odd corners, but even just providing information.
Your community is often going to be better at it. I mean, we still go. The great thing is, if I need to go back and look at, like, how did that work in Borderlands 2? Like, I have my mind's eye about how that worked 8 years ago, but it's shaded by faulty memory. I can just literally get on YouTube or Twitch. There's been times where I've just found a Twitch streamer that's streaming the content that I'm trying to remember how it worked, and I will literally get in their chat and be like, "Hey, I'm a developer at Gearbox, and I can like flash my Twitch link." And it's like, could you go over and use that chest? Like, I just need to see what happens. It's faster than me pulling out an 8-year-old build and finding the content and looking at the guts of it. So in that way, like, it's great. It's this distributed hive mind of like everything that's ever happened in the games before, and I can just go back and plumb it when I need it.
And the other thing I'll say that has affected development, coming back to that, is we used to have, we would have a QA team of, and we would still do this, of course, paid professionals whose job is to find bugs. And then we would also have, closed tests internally where we'd have testers come in and play the game, and we would just stand silently behind them, and watch them from another room or whatever, and observe them playing the game. But it's still not the same. And I think the advent of ubiquitous streaming and provides, like BT was saying, that there's this sort of irreverent objectivity that they can bring to it, like, where they're going to start saying this is bullshit or whatever, and they'll start going on a rant that they probably wouldn't do if they feel excited to come to your office and and they're playing the game objectively. Yeah. So I do think it gives us a new window of objectivity with a shorter turnaround that we've never had before, which is cool.
So I kind of want to shift this into talking a little bit about like game design trends, right? Because now we're talking about all these different factors that are coming into us developing games, right? So we're thinking about team sizes, we're thinking about the budgets that we have, but now we're also thinking about the audience that's there, that are watching it through whatever platforms they want to watch it. But there are challenges of game design that have continued to grow, and you as developers have continued to adapt solutions to these problems, right? That's what you guys do constantly and consistently. So in game design, there's certain trends that start in some games and then they spread into the wider industry. So as an example, quick time events became very common in big budget games for a while. Now they're sparsely used. Today we see something similar in adventure games with characters, squeezing through the cracks like Tomb Raider or whatever, or seemingly to hide load areas or things like that, right? So my question to you guys is, are there trends that have been left behind over the years that could be useful today? And additionally, what kind of trends are we seeing now that you think might propagate into a wider industry?
Sure. So for one, I think I can give at least one example of sort of both ways. For one, as games have gotten, from 10 people to 100 people to 1,000 people in some cases, and you have production values, are doubling and doubling and doubling, I think there is one of the things we've lost that I think is still out there to be reclaimed, and some people are starting to reclaim it, is the ability to have dynamic or reactive content. So for example, in a text adventure game, I type in my name is Squirrel, and then it says, hello, Squirrel, and then people call me Squirrel, right? Now, in a game with voiceover dialogue, you're not going to have the voice actor having recorded, certainly my name. And so, I think it also means you have to schedule the voice acting, and you have to get, then leave time after that for them to, articulate and instrument the voice points or whatever on the face motions. And so that means we have to lock down the script earlier, which means there's no flexibility in making those story changes. And so then it kind of drives us back towards this, what we call waterfall mentality of you have a vision and then you sort of execute it and there's no steering the ship. And I think that's a downside of this increased production. So I think as assets have become fancier and the whole pipeline becomes more complex and involves more people, like we said with specialists, it's harder to pivot on something like story or to make that dynamically pivot. And then I think on the other side, I think you see indie games, I think, are a very, very valuable feeding ground for ideas in AAA, where indie games now are trying, bolder and bolder things and pulling them off, whether it's procedural content stuff or whatever, or AI things. And then you start seeing studios having a little more fortitude for adopting those risks and saying, yeah, let's do something like that. Let's have a nemesis system or whatever.
Yeah, I always think about kind of a sine wave that kind of goes between complexity and approachability.
Right.
And I think we tend to get like, oh, we got new tech and we can do some way more complex things. And we kind of have to like reel it back and say like, okay, we did all those complex things, but it took too long to make them, or they were just too obtuse to the user. To plug Minecraft for a second, like my wife and I are playing Minecraft Dungeons right now because she loves Diablo fiercely. And, it gets her in the way that she needs that fix right now. But she's also like, cool, this, she can feel the hedge towards like, okay, it's the thing I like, but we've hedged towards a, not simplistic in the sense that it doesn't have the depth, but just simplistic in the terms of like, this is designed to pick up and play. The loop here is shorter. The button combinations are just more straightforward. And I think you always kind of see that as you kind of got all your acolytes into whatever thing it is, MMOs, RPGs, whatever your flavor is. And then once you've got them, there's always this kind of hedge towards simplicity to sort of go like, okay, we've got them. How can we maybe reel this back a little bit and get the next wave of customers and players into our thing by making this a little bit easier?
You're talking about that sine wave. I think that's really astute, and I see it as that those are wave fronts of sort of a ripple of an onion or a tree growing from the inside. As how I feel the industry has become, where you have sort of people in the 70s and 80s making games. It was all basically indies in garages, right? And then they became more mature and more sort of towards AAA, and then at some point you started, in again 2006, 7, 8, 9, you started having the new indie wave, this next wave coming, where you have these previous game production companies have now become AAA. You have indie re-exploding onto the scene, and then those people have sort of grown into AAA or whatever you want to call it, the like heavy indie. And then now those are to the point where they're starting to be higher production value and higher complexity. And then you have the sort of the new indie wave. And so I think there is this wave of that sort of the creativity and experimentation pushes outward from the middle, which in some ways is the indie developer. And there's more surface area on the outside, for AAA. But I think a lot of the real undulation happens in that middle. So I think it's a great analogy.
Yeah, completely agree. For me, like I can definitely relate to. So I'm a big fan of kind of the GameCube era game design, especially because that console wasn't doing well. The number of risks that were taken as far as quirky games and quirky game ideas, it really speaks to kind of seeing how as AAA budgets continue to grow and become more and more more people, more complex, etc. The amount of risk that companies are willing to take on those titles becomes less and less. And so I kind of want to see more I love that indies are pushing this, right? And that indies continue to be trying to capture charmy, quirky, interesting game mechanics that nobody has tried, that are combining multiple things. And so I definitely see a trend of the bigger and more complex it is, the more safe the game ends up being, right? And then also speaking to your other part of the question of what kind of trends are we seeing now that you think might propagate into the wider industry? I'm also kind of curious if Fall Guys is going to represent kind of the turning point. Because after we saw like PUBG, we saw a lot of people jump on the first-person shooter battle royale or third-person shooter. And now with Fall Guys being like, all right, let's take the nebulous battle royale concept and apply it to a different set of game mechanics and game types. I'm curious if the industry is going to try and like do a repeat of the past and like try and make their own Fall Guy. I kind of take the hint and be like battle royale, X battle royale. Like we've already seen like with Tetris 100. Or
Nintendo actually announced this morning Super Mario Brothers Battle Royale. Original Super Mario Brothers, but I think 35 players, and when you beat something, it goes to somebody else's screen. So they're already in that place.
Yeah, and so like I'm curious to see if that game in particular is going to like get more and more of that kind of like taking more of the spirit instead of the letter of other games into consideration for like future titles.
I think on the business side, you're seeing more companies actually be willing to be more flexible. I think 10, 15 years ago, like the top suits, they needed to understand a product early and simply. Like, this is a first-person shooter in space. Done. Where it's like trying to explain to them, it's like, yeah, but this has RPG elements added to FPSs. And they're like, no, stop. It's a racing game or action game. Like, with some very narrowly defined channels, and this needs to slot into one of them.
Yeah.
And now the notion's like everything's an RPG now. I can't point to the last game that didn't have health bars and XP bars that you grind or battle passes that you ground. Like that's just part of the nomenclature now. So I think you're going to see things like battle royale nomenclature and rule set design just infiltrate everything else, and whatever the next hotness the industry gets, like eventually that diffuses into just the common vernacular everybody's using.
So on the same topic of game design trends, I also want to ask you a couple questions specifically on game development. So, for instance, what are things that you guys feel are maybe like the golden rules for game development? Things that, regardless that we've now had this change of how information is dispersed, how acceptable games are, how many people are watching, how many people are interacting with it, regardless of how these variables have changed and grown over the years, what are things that you feel like are the golden rules of game development that never change?
Fail faster, find the fun.
I agree with that.
For real.
Yeah, I'd say happy people make fun games. That's always my. At the end of the day, if whether you're an indie or a AAA studio, if you're not having fun doing it, the thing you're making is probably not fun for the person that you want to play it.
I think it's taken us a little longer than it should have as an industry to sort of really realize and embrace that. But I think now you're really seeing much more of a focus on quality of life and that sort of thing, because I think people realize, even people who don't care about humans, realize that happy humans make better product, right? And so, let alone the quality of life for us all. So yeah, I also think there's an ethical responsibility that we're sort of now just only recently adult enough to consider. There's the joke by, I don't know if it's Edward Tufte, that there are only two industries that refer to their customers as users. And so I think we have responsibilities now for, how people treat each other online within our game systems. And do we create incentives for good behavior or bad behavior? Do we model that? Do we have mechanisms for dealing with that? We have communities to manage, but we also have, transactions and microtransactions, and how are we taking people's money, and how are we taking their time, and are we doing all those things in a kind of responsible way? And we never really stopped to think about that, 10 years ago, or certainly 20 years ago. We were just trying to figure out how do we make a fun thing that people will want to play.
Yeah.
So now that also kind of leads me to that next question is, with these ideas in mind, when it comes to how you guys are producing them, can you guys talk a little bit about how things were produced, like production methods that have worked back then, and how it's different now? But what are also things that are the same, that have stayed the same regardless that as time has evolved, if that makes sense?
I mean, 15 years ago, I can remember we had one producer on a project and they had an Excel chart, and and it's notes,
and they'd print it out and post it on the wall.
Green lights and red lights, and that sort of level of linkage. And now, through Atlassian and just all kinds of other software available to us, like the ability to actually track complex interdependent production has gotten way, way better. Especially like Shotgun on the art end is just immensely better than the kind of previous generations of task tracking and feedback. But the thing that's always like, you need a good human being steering those wheels on production side. Like it's still very much a human endeavor, even in dispersed COVID world, that it's about getting people to sit one-on-one and talk through something that is a blocker or plan something out. And the best producers, the ones that keep their teams motivated and on track and under budget, are the ones that have that high personal touch factor to them.
I think that's a perfect answer. I'm sure there are a lot of other answers, but yeah, like with Jira or whatever, Bugzilla or whatever, various like Atlassian, we can even automate and get metrics about well, Susan is always 40% under on her estimates, in general. So as a producer, I'm going to sort of wink, multiply this by the Susan factor, and Bob is always 20% over on his estimates or whatever. But like you said, I think some of the things that are still true is that, like you said, with happy people make good games, that we can't automate certain things, and people have to feel invested in their company and in their coworkers and in the project that they're working on. I think it's very easy to try to modernize and automate and update those things, but the real successful companies are the ones who really sit down with people one-on-one and understand that again, Joe needs public praise and Eric just wants a raise. And I think it's hard for anyone but a human to get those senses of how do you cultivate people and keep them long-term. It's very easy in the industry for people to, get forward progress by hopping jobs every 2 or 3 years. And so that's a challenge for the game studios to try to retain people like BT for, 10, 15 years, which is their goal.
And even just the way that we go and look at, what gets into the game and what gets into the next release has drastically shifted since the days of back when you had to go and push it on a disc and say, this is it. This is the bits everyone's getting. Sure hope they're good, right? With the ability to have DLC and patches and bug fixes and hot fixes, the way that we approach, what are we putting in the next release is definitely shifted. I think that there's still a lot of catch up for the industry to really move, kind of still shift over from the everything has to be done up front model to more of we'll ship it when it's ready kind of thing. And I've already seen that with different studios. And I'm interested to see that trend continuing as people are more and more accustomed to we actually could just polish this thing and ship it when it's ready instead of rush it out, right?
Yeah, the era of us holding up the Gold Master DVD is just probably over. It used to be ship date is ship date. There's the whole doctor, and now there's just there's Gamescom demo, and then the PAX demo, and then pre-release for press and a pre-release for streamers, and then a gated access release for pre-order people, and then day one, and then a 15-day patch and a 30-day patch, and whatever your game's cycle and cadence is. So for production, that means a more granular view of how things land, and also just how we write contracts and how we think about the business of it. It's not that hey, we're going to contract and make this game for 2 years and we're done. It's 2 years plus some variable amount of post-launch support. Some of it's going to be necessary, and some of it will be for fun, and some of it will be for business. Yeah,
it's also interesting that it's shifted, and having physical releases used to be the norm, and now it's like the vanity status thing. So it's like followed the way of music, where it's like, oh well, I've got all my records on vinyl. I'm fancy, right? It's like, yeah, I've got a boxed copy of Terraria.
Oh, that's wild. Okay. JV, you there, bud?
I'm here, buddy. This is the last panel, so we actually have a ton of flexibility when it comes to continuing the conversation. A lot of good questions so far. If y'all have any other questions, feel free to chime in. We can jump into the audience Q&A now, unless Nabil, you had some final questions for our panelists.
I have my last thing that I had prepared was if each one of you guys would like to share maybe one fun, small, short story of being in the industry that you'd like to share. That's my last bit here, but I know that we're kind of running out on time. So JV, if whatever you prefer.
Oh, we got time, buddy. We actually do have time. So
okay, cool. So final question for you, gentlemen. Could you please share any short, fun story that you guys would like to share about being in the industry? Something small and little bite-sized.
Yeah. Can I just talk about my favorite bug that we had?
Sure. That sounds great.
Oh, man. Love this one. So when we were making the update Aquatic, we wanted to have like fish swimming in rivers in Minecraft. And we were initially struggling with like, well, everything's got like a gravity component. So like, you know, how do we like make it so the fish like can swim forward without like falling and like, you know, crawling along the bottom of the river? Well, we had the bright idea of, we'll just take the gravity component off. But the problem was that as soon as we would like have a fish get out of water, it would flop once on the ground, fly up into the sky, and then about a minute later, it would rain down like all of the like fish bones and fish because it ended up suffocating up there. It was emergent gameplay at its finest. I wish we would have kept it.
That's amazing.
Let's see. I think one of the earliest memories I have in the industry, it was probably my second or third month working, and it was right when PlayStation 3 dev kits were like finally getting released out in more significant numbers. Like we had one, and the coders had it, and they guarded it preciously. And I just remember it was always this big like, "Don't worry, your dev kit's coming someday. Your dev kit's coming one day." And the dev kit finally came for our room that had 4 people in it. We were going to share it, so we made a nice little TV stand for it and put a TV and waited its arrival, and we got it. We plugged in, and we copied one build to it. It was like, this build's going to take 40 minutes. So we're like, okay, we're going to go to dinner. We're going to come back. We're going to play with it. Come back. We've bricked this beautiful new PlayStation 3 dev kit before it's gotten to run. Somehow, and like we were all gone, so we have no idea what happened. And just the look on like our lead engineer's face when he's coming in the room and our IT director, and they're like, "It took 6 months to order this. You idiots destroyed it in an hour." Well,
I remember that dev kit, and they had serious heating problems, so they just threw like 1 million fans in it and shipped it out. So when you turn them on, we had like 6 in an area. It would just be this, and like the whole like planes were spinning up to take off.
I ended up having one of those kits on my desk, and it was also, this is a dead piece of technology, but it's a Philips AmbiX, which is these things that kind of predate Philips Hue lighting system. And it was like, these are going to be lights that plug into your PC and take instructions from the game to turn colors on, but they also had fans. Like that was their big thing. It's like fans that are aimed at the player so you can have wind come hit somebody's face. And like every single time, I think it was like a tank level, if you shot the tank, it would have this like blast of air come at you, but it would be that same sound where it's like, So I had both of these things on at the same time, and basically I'm having to like debug the same tank mission over and over and over again, and the people next door are just like, please stop. Just whatever you will pay you. So you could come back at 9 o'clock at night and do this when nobody is here. Glad to have all the new solid state stuff. Fast improvement over the past gen.
Yeah. We got a brand new beta card from NVIDIA or something like that, which, you know, at the time to me looked like a truck. I'd never seen a video card this big. And we put it in, and got going and ran the game, and we didn't have the game frame rate limited, so it was running as absolutely as fast as it could. And so, like within 45 seconds, the card just got hotter and hotter, and we burned it out. We're like, great. That was our one card that they gave us as our special treatment. I had a period in, I don't know if this had been 99 or so, where we had beds and showers at the office, and I stayed at the office in a 90-day period. I only went home 5 times.
Oh boy.
And so we had a room full of all the swag. A lot of companies have like some closet where you go in and there's all the company t-shirts. So I just kept grabbing more Ion Storm t-shirts. I ended up with like 35 of them, and then just walk across the street to Target and buy another 12-pack of underwear every couple weeks.
Oh my god.
Wow.
That was it.
Living the dream.
The grind, man. Jeez. That's nuts. Oh, Squirrel, we just got to go to dinner, and you need to tell me like all these stories. I just need.
Yeah, there are plenty more that can't be aired. Yes.
Okay, no. We're just gonna make a book memoir at some point. Like whenever we get towards the, you're about to retire or something, we just slap the book together, put it out there. That would be amazing. Oh my gosh.
There's some stories in Masters of Doom about me that when my students discover them, there's always a moment of awkwardness.
Okay, JV, take us home, dude.
I was gonna make a joke on Squirrel's behalf. That was something along the lines of "That's my secret. I'm always on crunch." But I'll go in lieu of that instead and jump into some audience specific Q&As. From Roger, this is directed specifically at you, at you, Pico. Everyone in my household loves Minecraft. Will Mojang/Microsoft still support Minecraft Pi with updates?
I actually don't know the answer to that one. That would probably be a good answer for our community manager, although I don't know who it is since she just left. This is like super recent development. Gaming industry. I don't know. I'll have to find like a Twitter account to shoot you by, because I think Joel's taking over for that, but I don't know his Twitter handle. So I'm not sure. I'm sorry.
No worries. From Michael, this was really poised at y'all whenever you were having the positive impacts of COVID on people's consumptions of games conversation. He notes, would you guys say that we might see a significant game sales dip once COVID clears?
I think you're seeing a lot of uncertainty. Human beings, who can tell what's going to happen on the other side of this thing? Turns out they're complex, and I don't know. I'm cooped up. I'm ready to go on a hike somewhere, but I'm not every consumer in the world. And I think you're seeing a lot of companies plan for that uncertainty, like to get into market economics. Markets don't like uncertainty. It's not necessarily that something bad is going to happen. It's just if they're uncertain about it, they will hedge against that uncertainty. I think you're going to see things like mobile, where it doesn't matter if you leave your house, you still have mobile on you. Probably suffer less instability there.
Mm-hmm.
But you're also seeing new consoles being pushed out by the major players. So nobody's hedging from the market. I think everybody's firmly on board that like a new generation is launching this holiday season, and that is going to be self-sustaining for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years.
Yeah, I don't think there's a year, and I could be wrong, in history where it would be correct to bet against the game industry's growth. And I mean, like I wrote down in 2007, we were a $10 billion industry. Now we're a $130 billion industry. So in 13 years, we've become 13 times the size. So throughout all these adversities, we continue to grow. And I think that's going to keep being the case, both with kids who are being raised in a generation where games and computers are ubiquitous, but also the average age of the gamer has also kept rising as, people like us who grew up on Nintendos or whatever are now adults and having families and stuff like that. So I think you're seeing more gamers percentage-wise amongst young people and more gamers percentage-wise against middle age and older. And so I think it's just going to keep growing. And I'm sure that there will be a number of economic and other repercussions from COVID and post-COVID, but I can't imagine it would be a bad place to put your tent, pitch your tent.
Yeah.
Retail and physical in place, are the people I think you're going to get hit the most, and the more digital you are, the better. I also think the entertainment side, like the Twitch streaming and the professional leagues, is going to be a great opportunity for them because TV production's been halted for the most part by all this. That industry too will catch up at some point, but they're also planning in year-long chunks. So you're going to have a lot of TV networks that have air to kill, especially if sports aren't going to come back full blast. So, in the past, when you saw the writers' strike, they filled that up with a lot of reality TV shows. Well, you probably also don't want to do Big Brother where you put a bunch of random people in a house. So that's probably also bad right now. So esports, professional leagues, those sorts of things, it's a good growth opportunity for them, especially the ones that have been working with ESPN and ABC already, and even Fox Sports, I think, does some now, where they got a lot of dead air to kill, and this is good, easy content for them that they can get scheduled, and they clearly know that there's a market that will watch it, and there's advertisers that are interested in advertising to that market.
Right.
So huge growth opportunity for them.
I can't imagine esports not sort of smiling out of the corner of its mouth as professional, physical sports struggles with COVID and politics and everything else. I think esports is going to pick up a lot of that slack. So
The power of netcode.
Yeah, I guess as the esports person on here, I definitely cracked a bit of a smile, but I also remembered that I'm a fighting game player, so it still sucks a lot.
GGPO, baby.
We need
GGPO
it.
and
We
rollback.
need
That's
it.
all
We
need,
need
baby.
it. We need it. Y'all, thank you so much. This has been an incredible panel. I'm going to pick y'all's brains down the line with some questions of my own as well. But that brings the end of the gaming and esports track here at Dallas Startup Week. Again, huge shout outs to all of our panelists who were able to participate. It felt like it was incredible conversation after incredible conversation. And those conversations don't end here. Remember, we still have the final day of Dallas Startup Week programming happening today. Even though the gaming and esports track has ended, there's still plenty of great content for y'all to enjoy. So go ahead and take a look at some of the other sessions that are running. If you want to continue the conversation, again, I urge you to connect with all these fine folks on LinkedIn and keep the conversation up as well in the Dallas Startup Week 2020 Slack channel. And I guess I would be remiss to not mention also, of course, the Dallas chapter of the IGDA as well. It's a great way to continue to have the conversation, especially as you're starting to really develop in your game dev oriented career. But yeah, thanks again, everybody, for tuning in. It's been a blast, and we'll catch you next year for Dallas Startup Week 2021. Take care, y'all.
thank you guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks all.
Great job, y'all. Seriously, really good stuff. Thank you so much for doing this. I know it works crazy and whatnot, but I'm glad y'all were able to do it.
Absolutely.
No problem. This was a nice break from the normal.
Right?
Yeah.
It's sometimes it's like I catch myself saying this, like, damn, do y'all remember people? People were pretty cool. All right.
Yeah, bring it.
Thanks, y'all.
Yeah, bye.